howdy.
All right, before we jump into I just want to do my announcement. So, first, give a huge shout out and thank you to all of our Patreon supporters. Thank you so much for everything you've done to help us get through the year. Special shout out to Andrew, Gunther, Hill, Steven, Stevo, Nathan, and Will for just helping us get through this year. This year has been particularly challenging in a lot of different ways. But it's almost done. We're almost done. So I'm looking forward to seeing what 2021 has in store for us. And then the next thing I want to mention is thank you to all the Future League testers and supporters. This month has been really, really crazy for Future League. Hey, Alex? Like, there's been so many
Oh yeah.
conversations going on. Thank you to everyone who's been participating in that, giving your opinions, and being very honest about it. I know it's so easy to, especially when like game creators are part of the conversation, it's so easy to hold back your opinions because you don't want to hurt their feelings. But at the end of the day, that's how we make the game better. Oh, my voice is low. I'm sorry. It's I don't have my normal equipment with me, so I'm working with the best tools I have available. So we're doing what we can do. Music's still on. Let's get rid of that then. I don't see the music still on anywhere. Interesting. All right, we will try fixing this in a second. Let me just jump into our regular screen. Let's turn there. We turn off the background music. How's my audio now? Can people still hear me? How's it sounding? I mean, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter too much if they can hear me. Alex is the important one. It does seem like I'm dropping some frames too. Like the internet isn't super secure. I'm not with my normal equipment, so we're gonna have to just push through, which is unfortunate here, but we'll do our best. All right, so this week we're talking about the tournament that happened on Saturday. There were a few things that were really exciting about this tournament. First was it's been a long time since we've done a tournament.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's been 10 months or so. Because I think the last major tournament was the circuit in February.
Yeah.
So it's definitely been a while. And then, so that was definitely an exciting part. This is our first tournament with Rays. Okay, so the music's turned off. That's good. Let me know if my audio is good, if you can hear me well enough. I can try talking a little bit louder, but I'm worried it'll be too loud on Alex's end. Yeah, this was our first tournament using some of the Rays cards, which was really exciting. So we got all the champions here on the table and all the different decks that were played with. So this is Kun's first appearance in the tournament, Erica's first appearance. So that was really cool. And it was also our first tournament using Forethought. So a lot of firsts that were coming up in this tournament. Before we jump into the decks and everything, Alex, why don't you share with us your the thing that kind of like the highlight of the tournament? What was the thing you enjoyed the most?
Hmm. Uh, I really enjoyed the pre-lobby and after lobby
Yeah.
of the tournament. So prior to the lobby, everybody was just chatting about and having fun, and afterwards, everybody was enjoying and talking about their games. You could hear the excitement and the energy they had from their matches.
Nice. Yeah, I didn't get to experience that as much. I was constantly doing running around doing like getting all the tables set up and getting all the pairings set up. And then after the tournament was done, I was just so tired, and I was like, I don't know if I told you this, but after the tournament was done, maybe like 30 minutes or so after it was done, I went to sleep and I woke up the next day. Like I just passed out for the entire day. It was so bad. Uh, but no, that's great. I'm happy that people really enjoyed themselves. Yeah, I think for me, one of the most exciting things was getting some new players who weren't playing pre-COVID. So I think Darren was has learned during COVID, right?
That is correct. Yeah.
And then Kyle, he learned just before COVID hit. Actually, we had an open house at Forbes Hobbies a few days before everything kind of shut down, and then just never played since then. So it was that one open house, and then this is the first time in nearly 10, 11 months that he came out and played. So that was really cool for me, uh, having experienced players, but also bringing in some of the older players, well, new players, to come in and play. So that was definitely really exciting. All right. So, how do you want to approach this? What do you want to talk about first? Like breakdown of the decks, or uh,
Well, we could just. I don't know if you find it interesting because a lot of people are like Nubia is number one type thing, but she didn't take top two.
nope. Yeah.
Not at all.
Yeah. Idris took number one. Fong took number two. This is
Yeah.
an order, like right to left, right?
No, I believe uh, the Angel deck came in last,
Yes.
so this would be the order.
Yeah. And just because of the software we're using, we weren't able to properly define third, fourth, and fifth.
Yeah.
So this is
What it would end up happening was I had most points, then this deck had the second most points, and then these three decks here were tied for third
yeah.
point, third points. Yeah.
And there's some nuance behind it because, like, we know with Steven, that he was playing that Nubia deck in the center there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he came in, he tied for third, but the game that he won 1-0. So, or was it a
Mm-hmm.
one draw? I can't remember. But
That's true too. Yeah.
so he would have been ranked a little bit lower, and then
Since
I don't.
Steven's watching, we'll put him all the way back here. There we go. Just kidding, Steven.
Yeah. So I mean, it was our new time, first time using that tool. We're going to be trying to find little nuances to make it a little bit better. I just need more practice and experience with it, but that will be future tournaments, and I'll make announcements about future tournaments near the end of this video. All
That's true.
right, so that was definitely an interesting point, like the fact that the Nubia Angel deck did not do so well. Do we want to like jump into that Nubia Angel deck? Maybe talk about
Yeah, sure.
what some of the challenges were with it.
Luckily, this deck is a very clean Angel deck, so it's like 5 different cards. So going into this tournament, this was actually the one deck I did not want to face because I faced Mar piloting it before, and he has wrecked me several times with it. But the matchup didn't go that way. In the first round, as you can see, I'm just piling on River Knees over here. His starting hand, I believe, was literally all River Knees and no action. So the problem with the Angel deck, specifically this one, is that it 100% relies on Angels. So if you do not draw an Angel, you've probably lost the game. Every turn he was running on and off of 5 River Knees, gaining 5 life, and I still burned through him.
Yeah, that's very fair. The other thing I look at when it comes to a deck like this is that it's so streamlined that we talk about that breadth versus depth issue when it comes to deck design. How much do you want to spend going completely into your one strategy, making it work, making sure it's consistent, compared to hitting on a bunch of little things so that you can deal with whatever comes your way. And this deck just 100% is in that one strategy, and that one strategy only. Like, it can't pivot much at all.
For sure.
So I think that's definitely one of the challenges of making a deck like this.
It is still important to note this was the only deck to take me into 3 rounds, 3 different matches.
All right.
Because in the second match, he did get the Angels, and then he followed up by stomping me in the face.
So we'll get to your deck eventually, but just very briefly, do you want to mention what your deck was so that...
It was the Idris aggro deck. So every summon in the deck, I'm not going to pull it all out, either has Blitz or deals damage on entering. There's the 3 cheese, but those are just more for balancing the deck and controlling the tempo of the game. They're not necessarily the main part of your strategy. which I
Yeah,
find most three cheese aren't or shouldn't be.
that's fair. So you had I have your like just searching through your deck. So you have Otins, you have Inferno Ghouls. So the Otins are nice because they're a little bit defensive. Inferno Ghouls because they fill out that good 3 chi slot. Jump is to come in with aggression. And yeah, like you were saying, a lot of blitz creatures. So you have the baboons. The Formosans aren't technically blitz, but they come in and deal damage right away, so it's kind of like a blitz.
Yeah,
And then Brooks, and then I think Meteorites to cap off the deck. So super
for
super
sure. Yeah.
aggressive deck. All right, so the Angel deck we've seen so many tournaments where it's come and wreck things. This time it came in last, and it's nothing directly against Mar. It's also sometimes it's just uh, the small little moments that can make up a game
Hmm.
very very much, and I saw a lot of those happen when Mar was playing, and one of them being like just this one moment where he was completely exposed. He was not on his stone protector. He could not respond to things very well, and his opponent plays a purifying wave, and
Yeah.
he couldn't come in. And he had the shutdown in hand. He had it in his opening hand. He had a strategy to deal with the purifying wave, and just couldn't respond to it. So my challenge with a deck like this is just there's not a whole lot of room to pivot with it. Uh,
I agree.
and when it comes to building a deck, it's nice to think, okay, because I can run, how many copies does he have? 24 copies of River Knight. It feels good, but it's not always the best situation because then your deck runs one way only. If your opponent can predict it, then they can deal with it.
Yeah, that's true. Um, I saw the third matchup, and it was a bad matchup for Mar because it was the only deck. Actually, I haven't seen fully into Lionel's deck. I don't know if he
Mm-hmm.
ran the Purifying Waves because I know that's what the deck ended up running into later on.
Yeah.
Uh, but in like I said, in the second game he stomped me, but in the third game it was literally neck and neck, and I only won because I drew one of my sideboard cards, which was Revenge of the Phoenix. I was below 6 life. I managed to kill a Cabus and then just sort of go beside him, which looked, innocent, clearly. Just
yeah.
standing beside you with Idris. Why is Idris beside you? She's clearly not doing anything. And then he went in for the kill, and unfortunately, that killed him instead.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Revenge of Phoenix is just such a nice card against Angels. It's such a solid sideboard card in a lot of ways.
Uh, I just another thing for facing this deck. I did not once ever attempt to kill an angel.
Interesting.
Never once. For people going about that, the best way to get the angels off the board is just kill the champion and win.
That's true.
the well, not only that, but when an angel came down on the board, it was usually gaining, depending on the match, 3, 4, or 5 extra health. So it
Mm-hmm.
was starting off at a almost unkillable position.
Yeah.
So every time I summoned, I was usually just summoning on top of an angel, so that I would immediately be able to smack a Nubia.
Yeah. Like after a little while, there's so much resources sunk into killing angels that those resources could just be better suited to kill Nubia.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
And the game two may have been why I think I may have lost that game. Was at one point he played an angel, it wasn't really healed yet, and I was like, I could probably take it down, and then I did.
Fair enough. And if those extra 6, 7 damage was just dealt straight to Nubia, you probably could have gone for the kill.
Quite possibly, yeah.
Yeah. Shahan says, point of order, a 3 round tournament won't reflect too much on what's the best deck. Uh,
Yeah.
is unless things have gone terribly, horribly wrong. Uh, uh, how do you interpret that?
No, so it makes sense. What he's saying is this technically isn't a large sample size,
Yeah, yeah,
right? Because realistically, we need thousands of games realistically to get true crazy data
yes,
to see what the top decks are in that type of thing.
yes. No,
Which
that's
is fine that we don't, because then you get more completely different decks. Technically, all 6 decks here are completely different.
yes. Um, No, it's true. Like we don't know. There's so many different ways to run angels, and each person running angel is going to be better or worse at it in different situations, right? Like I may be
Hmm.
really good playing angels against I don't know, like your Idris aggro, where Mar might be better at playing angels against something like the Nubia deck or something, right? Like each
Yeah.
person has a better matchup too. And also, I don't know if this happens to other people, but every time I sit down to play against Alex, I already have a slight anxiety, which is already putting me at a losing situation. Alex and Stevo, always, always, I have this issue that I play against them, and then I have this slight anxiety that takes over, and I'm already losing, even though I haven't even done anything. So it's your matchup. It depends on how the games go. But we've always known that traditionally Angels have done really well in tournaments. Angels ranked third in the championship, and an Angel. You took the circuit tournament with an Angel deck, didn't you?
I did. It was a lot different than this.
Hmm.
Um, it ran, I believe, 4 angels, which is half the amount of this one.
Hmm.
Um, which more attests to the power of Nubia. That with 4 angels, I believed I could win. I
Yeah.
believe one angel. To be honest, the way that I perceive it, angels, if one angel is on the board, I should be able to win with just that one angel.
Hmm.
That's how I pilot the deck.
Okay.
But rather than getting all these extra defenses for those angels, it was damage dealing stuff. It was the tsunamis, the bolt shots.
Yeah.
I, as the opposite side, well, I believe if an angel came down, I should win the game. I wanted to be able to win the game if I didn't get an angel.
That's fair. Yeah. Sean saying, I think a 7-8 round tournament is where you'll start seeing deck strengths mattering more. Uh, so yeah, there is a lot more to it. And also like we had how many rounds did we have at the championship? I think 5 or 6. Um,
We had a lot. I think
yeah,
6 sounds about right.
and we did start seeing certain decks kind of propagate to the top, and also certain players were also coming up to the top. It wasn't. It, there was just a lot more nuance to it. So it's true. This was a small tournament. We didn't get the opportunity to do things the way we want to. But as we grow, hopefully more and more tournaments start coming up. For everyone who's watching, thank you for joining us. If you get the opportunity, please share this. I'd love to get some more people coming in and talking with us about this past tournament. But yeah, let's dig a little bit more. I want to talk about this deck. I want to talk about Lionel's deck in second, and talk about yours in first, just to kind of have that spectrum. So, how do you feel about Mars? Forethoughts there.
So I saw him bring the Cog Restrict, I think, in every single game. Uh, which is, I think, this is definitely the best card, I think, in his sideboard. I don't know what the extra Aura Surges are valuing, but what this also says to me is the fact that he brought these in every single game was, I think he just should have had these in his main board.
Hmm. Well, that's something he can go
Uh,
back and make the change for. But once the
yeah, yeah,
tournament
yeah, for sure.
starts, right?
For sure, sure, sure. That's what I meant in that game. Deck design wise, is
Mm-hmm.
that every game he played, he felt that this was just strong in his deck,
Yeah.
and I think that more comes down to the fact of how simplistic, how there's not much diversity here. That he wanted to add that extra diversity into the deck every time.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah,
I think the Aura Surge is just a balancer. Like he's running 4
that's true.
shutdowns. Yeah.
Sorry, you're right. Sorry, it's the 15th slot. I didn't even pay attention to that.
Yep.
We can throw this away.
And we'll talk about that in a little bit. We'll get into talking about the forethoughts. But yes.
If you don't know, I'm not a fan of the 15th slot. Yeah,
Yep.
that fully explains everything. Yeah, this Surge is fine.
Yep.
Doesn't want to come back down. I didn't see him bring in the holy walls,
I think
but
those were there for the OTK.
he. I wonder if he should have brought them in against me for the meteorites.
They
That's
could
just
have
more of
helped,
a
yeah.
thought. I don't know. I don't know. And then yeah, you're right. These threes are literally just to go. These threes are just for to bring these 7 Gs in,
Yeah.
essentially.
All right. That's fair. Yeah, it was interesting. I look forward to seeing more Angel decks show up in future tournaments to see how they are ranking and how they're playing now that raises come out, because the meta and the game as a whole has changed a lot. So are Angels as strong as they were back in J Lara? I don't know.
Hmm.
They were definitely a scary threat in those days. Uh, so
That's fair.
I don't know if they're just as strong now as they were then. All right,
All right, who would you like to see next?
I want to look at that Fong deck.
This is the one I saw the least of,
Hmm.
but I did get a. We did play one match after the event.
Yeah. How did it go?
Well, I ended the game with full health. He did not. The best the nicest thing I can say.
So I've been playing against Lionel for a long time. I love him, but he's played this one Fong deck and he's refined it a lot. So out of anyone who plays Fong, I think he's one of the better players. He's been playing with Fong since pre-Genesis, more or less. So I think he has a good flair for it, but I think Fong just is held back in a lot of ways as a champion. So
Ooh, see this fire hill right here?
yeah.
I used it against him quite a bit.
Yep, that's always the challenge of the King of the Hill moments.
Yeah.
So this is already you're
'Cause
seeing something very different in this deck compared to the other one, where we're now going for breadth compared to depth.
yes.
Like he has a lot of different things going on here. Darren says
I
no more
think.
angel decks.
Yeah, I was thinking that too. I was gonna say that comment this deck this season. Um, I lost my train of thought. This deck, I think it would have a hard matchup against my deck no matter what, because this Fang deck wants to be in your face.
Hmm.
Uh, and because he comes up to me, I didn't need to go up to him.
Yeah, that saves
So
you.
I stayed back. But in sense, it's a very similar deck to the aggro deck that I was running. In theory, it
Hmm.
has some of the similar pieces. You got the Baruchs and whatnot,
Yeah, so he
but I
has
don't
that.
think I got a full scope of the match because we only played a single round.
Hmm. That's fair. Yeah, a lot of pieces to this deck. So
All right.
individually, there's no card in here that feels like so off. The only thing that directly stands out to me are this 5 Gs.
Yeah.
Uh, Sunrise Fox, which is a solid summon, but it's a weird thing to choose because are you using it to heal yourself? If you are, there are probably better options. And if you're using it to heal your summons, again, there's probably better options. Or just going for the pure aggro because they're not cheap. I have run them in a long deck, like long summoner deck. They're just not cheap. And then the other one, shoulder throws. Shoulder throws are great. They definitely stand out a lot because they're one of the few cards that can target behind you. However, Rampage Toss just would have been a bit of a stronger option.
For sure. And he doesn't have a crazy amount of energy cards. Oh, I guess here.
Well, the other side of he does have some energy cards, but most of them are very cheap, like shoulder throw,
Yeah,
backflip. Backflip's on a bit of the
that's
expensive
free.
end. Shoulder throw's
Like
free.
that's
Wind
free.
slash, you're not
This is
paying any
barely a
energy. Yeah,
cost. This is barely a cost.
yeah.
Yeah, there. I think there was. It's.
It's
I think
really
strictly an upgrade,
and
probably.
backflip and revenge are the only
Yeah,
heavy energy things. So he's not
but even
burning
then,
through his
like
deck.
two revenges.
How many does he have in his main?
Two,
Two.
two.
Yeah.
So
So
it's literally not much.
um yeah, he's not burning through his timeline in any way. So he could have definitely upgraded things to be a little bit heavier on the energy side, to save himself some aura. Because it
Yeah.
looks like it's a very heavy aura deck.
So I did see him play the Sunrise Foxes. Every time he did it, he sort of just put it. It was always behind him healing himself.
Okay.
But I also never let him have a summon on the board. So
Hmm.
I don't know if that's that's a whole different story.
Yeah.
But that's the other problem with Sunrise Fox is that it's very fireballable.
Yes, that's true. And now you're playing a 5T and losing it to the built-in champion ability. But I mean, you can't always plan around that. Idris is
No, you can't.
there's so many summons with 2 health, and you gotta just
Yeah.
accept the fact that Idris is gonna kill him.
Hmm.
So,
But
mhm.
looking at this, I think the flexibility is why I see him coming in second.
Yes,
The
that's.
purifying wave, I assume, is how he beat Mar, because I think Mar was the second matchup. It was the only
Mhm.
matchup I didn't see Mar do. 'Cause that's why I'm surprised Mar ended up losing down here, because I think this match I think ended in a win for Lionel and a tie. I know they ended up
Mhm.
timing out,
Okay.
but that first matchup, it would have had to have been the purifying wave
Yeah.
flexibility. But even the Revenge of the Phoenix, it's pretty good here.
Mhm. How many bolt shots is he running? Only 4. So, what's your initial assessment if you see a deck like this? What would you be kind of guiding them towards looking at?
Are you saying like me editing it?
Yeah.
I'm not. I think these Fire Hills are might be a waste of time. I could be wrong,
So the one
but
thing
I
I liked
guess.
about the Fire Hill is it's the Fire Strength, Fire Pillar combo in one move, but that would
Hmm.
have comboed really well if he was running more techniques that he can just bring all
Spam.
together in one turn and OTK, right?
Yeah.
So if he's running, he has the bolt shots at 7. I don't know what is a solid 6 chi technique. Shoulder throws to rampage tosses, wind slashes are fine because they're attack
Is
abilities,
it
right?
fine? Yeah.
And then left hooks. So if he had a
Yeah.
few at each cheese slot, then all of a sudden the fire hill becomes this one turn you need to just kill your opponent. Well, then drop it, play all your attacks, and just move on, right? Like,
Yeah, I can agree. I can agree with that. Maybe that is the thing here, is that this might be a deck that is in theory two decks,
hmm,
which
yeah,
is a common issue. People tend to pull themselves apart because it's great when you let's just say this deck was divided into 20, perfectly 50-50.
mm-hmm,
Half of it is the summon side and you can control the board. The other half is the technique side. In the game, when you get all your techniques and it goes off, it's amazing. In the game, when you get all your summons, it's amazing. When you get the half and half, which is
yeah,
what happened when I was facing the Lionel, he would play, he plays a summon a turn, I kill it, I have control of the board because I have 3 summons on the board. It's not so great because then you're
mm-hmm,
just playing a fighter, but half your tools are constantly removed
yes,
because I can clear them easily.
yeah. So like I would have been looking at uh I don't know if there's another 3G that I would be looking at. I think the fire cups are fine. These are
Yeah,
fine. It's a Sunrise Fox I would be looking at pulling. If you're going to go on the technique side, Sunrise Fox and the
yeah,
Brooks. I would possibly keep the Giant Scorpions in just because I think they're a great partner to the fighter. You
yeah.
can
I can agree.
round 1 take a step forward, drop a Giant Scorpion behind you, and then every other round you start with the champion going in, doing your combo, and then when your opponent tries to surprise you with something, you have the Giant Scorpion tagging them for 3.
Yeah, yeah. My only suggestion would maybe have been to move the mythical protections to the sideboard in the beginning of the game.
And then just run a lot of heavier left hooks, or like that's the thing.
Probably, I would have probably balanced it with the Cubs. It's more about the Cubs, as I've said many times. It's not so much about the body. Like, I'm not going to waste my fireball on a Cub unless I really need to. It's more about the tempo for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And you very much need so in a fighter matchup.
Yeah.
You generally lose the fighter matchup once the opponent has so many summons, and then you have to go first, but they're body blocking with the big guy, and the small guys are going to come in and whack you.
Mm-hmm.
It starts to get rough. So
Yeah.
if you don't end up pulling the purifying wave, you just really can't get there. And that's what happened in our matches. He did end up having to blow through, I think, 2 or 3 bolt shots, but by the time he got anywhere close to me, he had no hand.
Hmm. Yeah. And that's the
Which
big
is
issue I find with
death to a
Fong.
fighter.
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
that's the thing about Fong and any fighter is that if you are running against summons, you need it's just if you're spending all your resources killing the summons, that's when you get to a point where late game you just don't have the resources to kill the champion anymore. And that's why I like the
Mm.
Giant Scorpion. Giant Scorpion, and this is also why I am a huge fan of Zamber Dragon with a fighter. Because the Zamber Dragon can start pinging off small creatures so that you don't have to waste things like left hooks or wind slashes to kill off the little creatures. you can hold on to them to stockpile into some sort of bigger combo.
Hmm.
But giant scorpions, amber dragons, they can come in and start pinging off the smaller creatures and even necroliches, which is even better. So
Yeah.
I like the giant scorpions. I think the Baruks, if those were swapped over to bolt shots or like split between bolt shots, so three, so like another bolt shot and maybe like two more bolt shots and a revenge.
So I'm never against the Baruch. As I see a Baruch as a technique that costs aura. Is how I see a
Yes,
Baruch.
I don't disagree
Uh,
with you there. Hmm.
I know what you mean. Like extra techniques works with the Fire Hill,
Yeah,
but Baruch is so powerful that it's almost guaranteed on the first turn you summon the Baruch that you're gonna hit for 4, and then there's a huge chance you get a hit again for 8.
yeah. I just
And that's why I love Baruch so much.
I don't like the spread on the 7 chi. Like it's just
I
it's
gotcha,
too
gotcha.
much diversity. I would like to see it concentrated in two, maybe even one, just to like focus that win condition, and then have the sideboard to spread it out or swap it out if you want to do something else. Because
Hmm.
Fong, I think the one of the biggest issues, like you mentioned before, is that this deck is suffering from an identity crisis. It doesn't know what it wants to be. So if it focuses
Yeah,
on what it's trying to be at its core, and then swaps around if it needs to. So the Brooks might be good again in a sideboard, and bolt shots in main
that's
if
true.
your biggest concern is like angels. But if your biggest
Very true.
concern is tempo, then Brooks in your main and then bolt shots in your side.
Let's take a look at the sideboard here. So I really like this Substrike as the swap out for the Purifying Wave,
Yeah, that's
because
actually
that's an easy swap. So
yeah.
great. You facing a deck that doesn't run summons and alterations, just easily swap it out. A part of me almost feels like I'm not the biggest Purifying Wave, but if anything, this tournament proved me wrong. Uh, like looking at this right now, I'm like, I'd almost rather this be 2 Purifying Waves that allows me to switch 2 6 Chis to 2 7 Chis.
That's true.
And then this is perfect sideboarding, is you could just swap out 2 Purifyings for a Substrike. Because I
Hmm.
feel like at 3 Purifying Waves, it's already like a whole Hail Mary if you drew it in the right matchup.
Yeah, and I think the last thing you want in a game where Purifying Wave is useless is to draw a second Purifying Wave. That's
Yeah,
the biggest pain because then you have 16 chi sitting in your hand that has very little value add. It's okay if you have 8 chi sitting in your hand that has very little value add, but 16? That hurts.
there's
All
a
right.
there's a single Revenge of the Phoenix, which is just it's interesting. I guess you just figure out which one you don't want.
Yeah.
Well, Revenge of the Phoenix is an amazing sideboard card, so
Yeah.
I understand why it's here. And then you just have to figure out which piece you want here.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, the 5 Chis, we know what the amnesia's for. No, no, no. I don't think no one had to bring it in any of these
No.
matchups. The sidestep is interesting. How many is there? 4. So it looks like it's for the foxes.
It looks like as in, those two cards are both targeted towards the OTK.
Yeah.
Because the sidestep is the only low chi evasion card which deals with OTK. Because backflip, you start off with your back against the wall. You can't play backflip.
That's true.
So sidestep is your option there. So that would be my assumption of why he has the sidesteps, and I get it.
Yeah.
The OTK is definitely a scary deck.
Though the piece that confuses me the most is right here.
That's true. When would you ever swap any? On the one hand, I would see a game where I'd swap out the backflips for the Phoenix Fires to get more aggression, but I'd
Hmm.
rather these just be wind slashes.
Yeah. Yeah. 100% agree. Uh, I think it's mostly because there's no the swarm deck that is playable in the current meta, which is the Necrolich deck, is not going to die to 1 damage
No,
AoE.
unless
No.
you're playing against skeletons,
Yeah,
like Call
yeah,
for the
that's fair.
Bones.
That's fair. So
Now, sorry,
there's a place.
there is another reason why I could see, and this is purely because I know Lionel as much as I do. There's one other reason why I think he put this into a sideboard, and that's because that artwork is so pretty. You got it. It's a really nice piece of art. And Lionel loves Fong, and it's just like on the occasion he will want to play that just because of the artwork.
And then these are here for the mythical protections, which makes sense.
2 to 2. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense. So at the end of the day, if hopefully Lionel comes and watches this video at some point, I'll tell him to. I think it really comes down to that identity crisis in the deck. If he wanted to be the summoner, focus more on the summon side. Fong, it's hard to play the summoner, but
Ah, I disagree.
I said
He's
hard, not
great. So
impossible. The problem is you want to be running in. However, Fong has Fire Shield. It's an amazing built-in ability right there. So she could definitely come in and do some damage as a summoner. What does she have on the Bellum side? That's a really solid summon.
Not much. I
The,
find if you're going to summoner, you're almost playing the Thymos summons because they're so
yeah,
great.
there's only
Because I
one
don't think
Bellum summon that
with the
really stands out, and that's Guardian of Balance. But it's too
yeah,
slow.
I don't know if that really works with Fang.
No,
Yeah, yeah.
it's too slow, but it is probably the best Bellum summon. So you're looking mainly on the Thymo side, and that's where coming in with some offensive and Firehill could be interesting because if you can boost up, like make your opponent weak to fire and boost up your summons, it could be useful. But I mean, all his summons except for Giant Scorpion all have fire damage already built in.
Yeah.
So it could be semi useful or go on the technique side. But the technique side is so vulnerable since most of meta right now is summon heavy. So
Well,
being a fighter
because
in meta is hard.
he had so much fire already built in, would these have been better as just fire pillars?
He doesn't have access to fire pillars. Thymos
Right.
is earth pillar.
That's right. Yeah. You're right. You're right. You're right. That makes sense. Okay.
All
Okay.
right, cool. We talked about this deck enough. Lionel, if you ever watch this, you're a jerk. All
Alright, what do
right,
you want to see next?
and let's go into your deck now. Let's go into why you could talk a lot more detail about this because you could talk about why you built this deck, what was kind of your goal behind it, and did you expect to do as well as you did?
Okay, so step one, if you're here, I bait this deck specifically because Will was like, "Oh, the only decks that win are Axon, Axon,
Bellum.
Bellum decks. Angel decks are rampant everywhere." So I'm like, "All right, I'll go win using neither of those colors."
That's fair. That's fair.
That's me being pretty cocky. I don't know. Cause I feel like I should have lost in that first match. I really do. Oh.
I think like a well designed, well tested angel deck um, would have held its own a little bit more. I think Mar tried to do something really clever, and it is Mar's style. Like every time I play with him, he does these type of things, and I love him for it, but I hate playing against him for it.
Like
And
when he traps you into a bunch of walls.
yeah, he does stuff like that to me all the time, and I love seeing it, but I hate experiencing it. If that makes sense. But yeah. So I'm happy he came in with the deck he did. I think if he had made some small tweaks, like made Nubia into more of a support to the Angels instead of just running the Stone Protectors and the River Knights. Anyways, we could talk about that more, but let's jump into this. So you designed this as more or less a challenge to Will's statement, and we will tag Will at some point to comment on that. And then, so why
There's
Aegis?
another thing about this deck though.
Okay.
There's another thing about this deck. Now, a while ago, when there was I believe Cody was doing some streams. I think I was facing JC. Was I facing
Okay.
JC or Lionel? But in one of the first matches, they asked me to face somebody. This is essentially the exact same deck.
Hmm.
The only difference was Rays
Yes.
with the baboons and the Otons. Uh, Yes, yes, yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. uh, like this deck had already existed for me. It literally ran a whole lot of Formosans, but like now that I've been playing it, I wonder if I should be running just 12 baboons. To be honest,
Really?
as a random thought. If you just in general, if I'm already in their face, the baboon is going to do an extra point of damage on that starting turn.
Okay.
If I save 5 aura, and 5 aura is a very important number for Idris.
Yep, yep.
And because it's slow, it's one of those things where the opponents usually don't care about rushing to get rid of it. So it ends up being more likely
Hmm.
to do 6 damage.
Interesting. So do you think it's kind of like a sleeper card? It's one of those cards that your opponents ignore, and because of that, it's stronger for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It also has its flaws. Like it definitely got in the way uh, in the matchup versus Mar I lost. Was this this monkey was blocking my path for the ones that did have swifts to get in to hit him. But that's just generally the issue that once an angel is blocking a square and your ground creatures aren't in that square, they can't get through.
Mhm. Mhm.
But the main purpose of the deck. So if I okay, 4, 8, 12 cards. Let's look at these 12 cards right here. These 12 cards are the only cards that aren't dealing damage in some way, aren't aggressive in some way.
Okay.
So realistically, in a hand, I really only want to draw one. So the
Mhm.
main purpose of the deck, and this deck was adjusted with a few people were helping me out, was more threats increases my chance to win.
Hmm. Okay.
So originally, this deck had a lot more malicious persuasions. I think the jumps actually went up. I think there was less of those in the beginning. But the whole point was, why should I care if my summon dies?
If you can just
It actually
replace
came
it.
down to if I can just replace it.
Yeah.
So rather than having these, and I don't know what else I was using, I ended up converting a whole bunch of these into just more monkeys.
Gotta love the monkeys.
Let them go in, let them get their base damage. If they've done their base damage, they've done their job. If they do
Hmm.
more damage, they've done a Hail Mary of a job. Apparently, that's my word. That's my word. Word for the day is apparently Hail Mary.
Nice.
Uh, but actually, what this ended up doing, rather than ever saving my summons, was almost exclusively my turns were this: turn one, move up, summon a Barook. My opponent goes. Let's just say they move to the left or the right. I go end of their round, malicious persuasion, and the Barook was able to attack them in turn one.
Mm-hmm.
That was their
Yep.
exclusive use, which is in theory the exact same use as jump. Jump pretty much would have done the exact same thing. Now that
Yeah.
I'm thinking about it, but it does have that upside of occasionally I could mess around and save the Barook from dying.
Yeah, they both have their small little nuances. And so malicious persuasion, you're using it very differently than when I use it in my monster deck. Because in my monster deck, I invest so much into a single creature that I don't want it to die. I want to keep it alive for as long as possible. For you, you want to just throw your creatures into the thick of things and let them do their damage. And if they die, they die. If they succeed, then that's great. You get to do more damage later on. Um,
Yeah,
and so it's a different perspective. And the fact that malicious persuasion, you can use it defensively is pretty cool. Jump, you can use it to really navigate around a board. So I kind of like the fact that you have both. I would say if someone's copying this deck, um, don't maybe don't favor one over the other. I think they're both pretty interesting.
yeah. No, it's very true. Because jumps are very good for the baboons. It
Hmm.
helps you set up the baboons way better than anything. Where the persuasion sets up the Barook, I think, a lot better.
Hmm. Interesting. Okay. Yeah.
And then of course, Meteorite is just it's an extremely powerful card, and I did not care if I had a Barook on the board. This was generally my play if I played a Meteorite. Almost always, your Barook is already facing your opponent. I would cast Meteorite on the stack and then attack with it, and then just let that Barook die. What's your opponent gonna do? Gonna waste resources killing that Barook that's gonna die?
Yeah, probably not. Yeah, and then they're taking 9 points of damage right there.
Hmm. And then
That's
they're gonna take 2 extra more from the fireball that is
yeah.
coming.
Yeah, because I think I saw that in one game where you did a meteorite, hit them with a brook, did a second meteorite, and then fireball and won the game or something like
Yes.
that. And it was just
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah. It was exactly lethal.
yeah, it was just an insane amount of damage very, very quickly. So yeah, that was definitely it was really exciting. It was very, I would say it's very Thymos chaosy. Like it's very Vishud style where it's like my creatures are there to do their damage. So let's, as long as we get the win, we don't care how we did it. And
Hmm.
having that aggression, I think it plays really well. It's
And then the other fact is because these summons are just beaten in your face,
mm-hmm.
uh, and your opponent is trying to deal with them. Idris has 25 health. By the time they get over there, it's so hard to take it down.
Yeah, and that gives you time to build up reserves and do other things. And on the small chance that they hit you with something crazy, you have the Oten.
Yeah. Uh, Odin's great. It's more so it's like versus the Angel deck. That's what prevents 6 damage right there.
Yeah.
Uh, but a lot of the times when I had an Odin in hand, I would be prepping my turn to position myself to Odin so that I could summon one of these dorks in a position that it will actually be able to
Yeah.
hit the champions that are trapped. Because the Angel deck was extra difficult because of the River Knees. Like I said, he was usually gaining 3 to 5 life each round, and I was having
Mm-hmm.
to burst through that.
Yeah. Man, it's intense. So another perspective we can have, because this is your own deck, and we can ask this question, is what do you think is the major weakness to your deck? Like, what you already said that the Angel deck was one that you were fearing. Is there something about this deck that you think is the big pain point?
Big pain point. So obviously, which is surprisingly is I kept cutting these down lower and lower for 8-12 because if you get a hand of these,
Mm-hmm.
you've lost the game.
Okay.
Uh, but that's why there is so many threats that even an Inferno Ghoul can delay you enough time to draw into one of the other threats.
Hmm. Nice.
At the end of the day, it is still a summon deck. So if you do not get summons,
Mm-hmm.
you're gonna lose.
Yeah. So if you're playing against this deck, if your opponent's playing this deck, what would be your core strategy? Keeping distance, or of course it comes down to
So
what you're playing, but
I debated this with Steve after Steve's matchup. So Steve played the Nubia Drain deck,
mm-hmm.
and he had the issue where he's like his deck's tempo was he needed the game to go slower to build up his summons,
Yeah,
and he knew my deck was going to go as fast as possible. So it doesn't matter. There's this the perception that with Idris, I'm just going to lose the game if I do nothing. Does that make sense? Is
yeah,
that the
because the
perception?
fireball's hitting in, and if you don't put the pressure on her, then she's just gonna fireball you out.
10 turns is a long time.
Yes.
You can take 2 turns off to set your board up.
Yeah.
The the games that I won quickly were the ones where my opponents came closer to me.
Hmm.
The ones I was harder at was the Nubia one where they ran in a corner because I have to get all these summons over to him. Not only that, then technically it just can't sit back and have her own protection. She has to come up to bring the summons closer to you.
Yes. Yeah. It's really about who's giving the home field advantage up, right? Who's coming
Mm-hmm.
in close, who's sacrificing their um, their main phase to try to put on some speed. So
Yes.
yeah, I
And
definitely
if,
see
if
that.
somebody double moved, my blitz creatures are all over you because you came up.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It's one of those things I don't think about. It's like there is this idea of the home field advantage. There's this idea of how you're moving in, and there's so much nuance to the tactical side. And like I don't see it when I'm playing casual. When I start seeing people play competitive, as I think about why did they lose and what were the small movements that they made that gave up the game, and like that's one of those things. It's like giving up a pawn in chess. Sometimes it's the right move, sometimes it's not, and it's trying to play it the right way. So, anyways, it kind of just blows my mind at times.
That's fair. Cyborg wise, uh, these two were probably the most brought in, because it was usually yeah, versus Angels, and I faced Fighters. So I brought this in
Mm.
versus Fighters. I brought them both in versus Angels. Versus the Drain deck, the only two cards I brought in were the Meteorites, because the not the Chasmodons. Oh, what's the card called? You can
Hegemons.
see, I can look them right here. Hegemons. They start with 3 health.
Oh, okay. So the middle
I
tier
can play a
kills them.
lower one. I'll be honest, I never play the middle tier. I just gonna pay the 2 aura and do the 5 damage. But there was one turn where he played like a bunch around him, and I was like, man, I want to play the middle tier, but I just did the 5 tier anyways.
Fair
Because the
enough.
point is, my life doesn't matter. In that instance, I was like 5 HP off of a Nubia. Now that matters.
Yeah.
And then the Revenge of the Phoenix didn't help me in the Drain deck because they
Hmm.
don't work with Revention. They don't work with
Yes.
the Drain at all.
Yeah. And like that deck isn't designed to be using the Guardian of Balances to be dealing damage. It's more about stalling the board so that the Hegemons can go in unimpeded and just start
Yeah.
draining health. Nice.
The I don't think there was a single match where Mythical Protection would have helped me.
Now, one thing I would mention, we've seen 3 sideboards. I think all of them are running Selective
True.
Amnesia.
I
Is
could
it
have brought it in versus the Mars
against the Cog Restricts?
Cognitrix. That's
Yes.
the only place I could have brought it in.
But so you got the Selective Amnesias. Is Do you think, since I mean this was a small tournament, we don't really know the full scope of things, is it still worthwhile to even put the Selective Amnesias in your forethoughts, or should you just forego them?
Sid, this is my 15th card. I could throw this off the table.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. You just have
No,
one
no,
in
no.
there.
There's only one in here. It's because it's my 15th slot that I had to put a 5G in. Because to be fair, I could bring it in, but my odds of seeing that one card in that matchup would be so rare.
Yeah.
I don't like Selective Amnesia for its intended goal. I don't think it does it. And like the side piece where it's like it could be good against Nubia, it doesn't.
No.
If this said discard randomly down to 5, that'd be a
Hmm.
different story. Because it's their choice, it's just pulling their 3 cheese out of their hands and their 4 cheese.
Yeah. No, it's purely reaction. Like it's purely to deal with Epiphany.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
purely Epiphany.
yeah. No, that's fair. All right, we don't have a whole bunch of time, but hopefully people who are watching enjoyed kind of this breakdown of some of the decks, talking about the nuances of the decks that were played with. I want to jump into some of the comments that were brought up about forethoughts and how that experience was. So, um, one, there was the common response of just need more practice with it. I think forethoughts are a little bit different than Magic sideboard because of the lock and show method. It is a little bit different. There is some nuances that you got to look into. So needing some more practice, that's good. That it was useful in certain games to give you that malleability to kind of swap things up. The chi restriction is one thing that, I mean, we talked about it ourselves. It's a weird thing. There's 2 things I want to test out, and we'll do 2 different tournaments to test them out. One tournament we will increase the size of the forethoughts from 15 to 20, and
Yeah,
another one is keeping it at 15 but getting rid of the chi restriction. I like testing one variable at a time, and while we have the opportunity to do so, let's just test one variable at a time.
that's fair. Yeah.
And so eventually we'll kind of ramp it up to a point. And then the other thing is there was one person who came in and said the lock and show method was very important because he felt it was too easy for his opponent to cheat. And it just gave a sense of comfort. I think being able to double check your opponent's side as well. So those are just some of the feedbacks we got. What were your general thoughts going from having tested it to your first tournament actually doing it? Uh, did your assumptions of how you felt the four thoughts would go, did it go the way you expected, or was it a bit different?
It went the way I expected it. With one exception. Well, let's say two exceptions. One thing, I'm pretty lazy. So I didn't. Sometimes I'd observe, but I wouldn't really observe the sideboard that they were bringing in. I'm like, okay, yeah, those are the regular criminals. Like the cog restrict got brought in, but that didn't stop me from stepping into the cog restrict area and getting cog restrict.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but there's one story, and I'm pretty sure you guys were watching us, but I don't think you, since you weren't in our chat, you probably didn't notice what was going on.
Okay.
In the Steve matchup, me and I, there was a missed sideboard.
There's what?
So Steve put in the sideboard, and then he went, "Wait, why is my deck 51 cards?"
Oh.
But Steve caught it, not I. I wouldn't have,
Yeah.
obviously, but it's something. It's easier in tabletop. But if this was a real life game, we wouldn't have.
Yeah.
Because Steve saw it, he was just like, "Okay, I'm gonna reset my deck and re-sideboard," and
Mm-hmm.
just the same cards went in. I think it was a 3 chi didn't get pulled out in the early in the thing.
Okay.
So there was 5 came in, but only 4 got pulled out by accident,
Mm. I see. I see.
which is weird. Because I was like, I felt I don't know how it happened, but like I said, I was being lazy, and also I trust Steve. He's a friend of mine for a long time, so it's not like I would. If Steve's watching, if there's one person to me who I believe embodies lawful good in D&D, it's Steve to me.
Hmm.
I would trust with all my life with anything.
You hear that, Steve? Big shout out, big support for you. No, that's good. And like,
Did I say lawful evil or lawful good?
you said awful good.
Okay, good. I was like, and then in my mind, I'm like, did I just call Steve lawful evil?
uh, no, I think I don't think the lock and show method held anyone back from wanting to sideboard the way they did. And talking to players about it, the general consensus was kind of just it didn't make enough of a difference seeing what my opponent did.
Mhm.
But again, it, there is it does correlate to the stakes of the tournament, right? Bigger tournament,
Yeah,
there could be more challenges with it, uh, and we need to know how that feels scaling up. Is this appropriate, right?
for sure.
Because again,
Uh,
the pardon, what were you gonna say?
go ahead.
So again, the lock and show method is designed for larger tournaments like championships. It wasn't
Yeah,
it wasn't a system that was designed for local tournaments, smaller tournaments. It's about thinking about the higher end tournaments and the challenges that come about hosting those, and trying to give the players the opportunity to make sure that their opponent's playing ethically. So that's my perspective from a design perspective. But from the player's perspective, I mean, that's why I have these conversations with you, for you to tell me from a player's perspective how you feel.
that's fair.
Yeah. So yeah, like there were some cards that were brought in to create small little nuances or catches. The cog restrict I think was a big thing in Mars deck, and shutdowns, mythical protections, but it's one of those things that if you have them, you have them. Like your opponent can't, you as a player can't stop what you're doing just because your opponent might have those things, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, cool. Uh, what would be a big thing you'd want to see as a change?
At least a minimum of one more card. As if you guys haven't realized yet, I hate the
Mm-hmm.
15th card because I like to pair cards together.
Mm-hmm.
That's definitely my number one change to the lock and show.
Yeah.
Uh, and from there, I don't know, because like you said, we don't know that if this is the right fit. We don't know if this is the right sideboard.
Yeah.
Uh, uh, and I did get a chance to watch Shenanigans video about the at the end of the game you show your sideboard, uh, and that is a good concept, but there is one flaw with it.
Mm-hmm.
is that it it puts the winning party has no incentive to cheat. It's actually the losing party that has the incentive to cheat. So if you win your first match, there is no incentive for you to cheat. But if you lose your first match,
Mm-hmm.
you can cheat because there's another sideboard to happen. So you're going to fix that sideboard for the third match. So then, if you win, your sideboard looks right. Sideboard looks right.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So.
But that's just the starting point. I think he's onto something there. It
Mm-hmm.
just still needs to be worked on.
Yeah. It needs to
Yeah.
be an ongoing conversation, and
Yes. Yeah.
it's one that I've mentioned this before. It's one of those things that we need to make sure we have a good system in place for when the tournaments get large enough that the incentive to cheat is there, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Like at the championship we had, when the winning person was taking away $1,000, it was still just a casual tournament. I mean, I've seen stores host local like local tournaments with a larger prize pool than that for Magic or other card games. Uh,
For sure.
so $1,000 prize pool isn't that big, but when we start talking about like 50,000 or 100,000, then the story starts changing, and we want to make sure that by the time we scale up to that point, we have a good system in place. So we're testing out the lock and show, but in a few months from now, we may test out something completely different, a completely different system that's not part of the rules. It's just a rule for that tournament, and
Mhm.
we'll
Makes
see how
sense.
it goes. All right, we might do the.
Yeah.
I've always been a huge fan of the multi-deck system. You and I have talked about the logistics of why that doesn't work, but it's something that I've always kind of leaned towards and I liked. So maybe that's the system we go towards. So there's a lot of comments coming in from Shahan. Let me jump into those for a second. Um, it's hard because some of them are out of context. So I think forethought should only have a chi restriction. I think that so there might be a chi restriction. We'll have to test different things out. If it only had a chi restriction, so like to say like 100 points, and it
Hmm.
doesn't matter how many cards you bring in. I so part of me is almost like I don't know if that matters too much. Like, how much should we penalize someone for making forethoughts with a bunch of eights in them? Like, at the end of the day, as long as your deck's balanced, I don't care what cards are in your forethoughts from a
Yeah.
design
That makes
perspective, right?
sense.
So that's why I'm
Yeah.
more leaning towards the 20 cards with unlimited cap on your chi, like no chi balance. It's just 20 cards. And I think that's a little bit better because then you just find the 20 best cards and 20 cards, if you swapped all 20, that's 40% of your deck. That's enough to swap your deck and make a real impact. So
Hmm.
that's what my gut's telling me to move towards, but I want to do it one step at a time, do it with proper process. um Steven says that he hears and he appreciates your comment. True friendship. Sean, again, don't make players judges. We've talked about that. Uh, Again, there's nuances to think about. So I'm not I'm not saying that we're in the right space, but again, as I've said time and time again, we're working towards getting to the right space, right?
Hmm.
Um, you can never take cheat in the critical match. That's the key. So that's Shahan's response is that game three, which is could be the tiebreaker, you can
Hmm.
never take a cheat into that.
Yeah. But then in that concept, you're like, the person who's losing just cheat round two, then go back to normal for round three.
Yeah,
You're
like
you're incentivizing that. But no, I agree. I agree with you. They it has its place. That's why I said I think something's there. I just don't think it's fully there yet.
yeah, uh,
Because I think the ending where the winner shows their chi. I think that I think that's part one of the pieces. That's where
mhm,
I'm at. I think that's one of the pieces. Because then it's just like, but it's one of those weird things where your opponent has to do it. I know those flaky people who will just sort of like clean up their stuff and go. It's And then what
Yeah.
do you do? But sorry, we're getting off topic. We're getting off
Yeah.
topic.
Yeah.
We'll have to have a Jahan stream one day.
You hear that, Shahan? Maybe we'll bring you in for a chat, and the three of us can talk about this in further detail. Uh, but there's a lot of nuance to it. All I'm saying with 100% certainty is that it's a deeper conversation than just use the system that other games have used. Uh, like we cannot plug in Magic's system for sideboarding and just have it work beautifully in Genesis. I just don't think that that's true. That's where I know I'm at. But yeah,
That's fair.
um, I think that's everything for this week. I know I have to head out, but uh, it was a good conversation. I really enjoyed doing the tournament. I'm looking forward to the next one. Speaking of that, I'm planning two tournaments in January. One of them, which will be a standard tournament like this, where you're playing with Beta, J, and Raise cards. Another one, I want to do a tournament focused around Future League, and that might be uh, we might leverage that because I want to see how some of the Future League cards look in a competitive scene. So look forward for details on Future League, the further tournaments coming for January. I'll be posting out details, I think, this Sunday about when they'll happen, the timing, registration, and there may, just to increase the prize pool, there might be a entry fee. So I'll be talking about all that. Alex, any final thoughts?
If you are in the Future League chat, we put a poll up. Please participate in the poll. It's very fun to look at. Eventually, I'll share the information with Sid. Right now, it's all my secret knowledge.
Yeah, I'm super curious about that. But yeah, all right. Thank you, everyone who joined us today, and we will check in with you next week. All right.
Have a good
Bye.
one, guys. Bye.